Hey friends, before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more intense, emotional stories. Your support means everything. The first warm weekend of June had settled over the Belgian countryside like a blessing, turning the fields near Leuven into rolling sheets of green and gold. The family barbecue at my uncle's farmhouse was supposed to be a peaceful break. Laughter, grilled corn, beer chilled in a metal bucket, the smell of wood smoke drifting through the lazy afternoon air. But humiliation has a way of rotting even the sweetest summer day. I didn't know the sign was on my back until the children started laughing behind me. At first, I thought it was just the usual mischief. They always tried to prank the adults when the whole family gathered. But their giggles grew louder, sharper, and then even some of the adults joined in, hiding their smiles behind their glasses of rosé. I frowned. What's so funny? My cousin Elise finally took pity on me. She stepped forward, tugged a piece of string from my shoulder, and held up the cardboard for me to see. "We'll work for food." A childish font, a smiley face. And in the corner, written in smaller letters, courtesy of Sophie. My girlfriend. Sophie stood by the old stone grill, sipping beer and grinning like she'd told the joke of the year. Her blonde hair, usually pinned up for her office job in Brussels, was loose around her shoulders. Her sundress fluttered in the warm wind. She looked beautiful. She always did. It made the sting of her betrayal far worse. I forced a laugh, pretended it didn't bother me. Pretended it wasn't a reminder of the one thing she loved to weaponize: my unemployment. I'd been laid off from the factory 3 months earlier. Automation had won again. I was between jobs, struggling to find work that paid enough to keep us afloat. Sophie had been patient at first, supportive. But patience has a way of thinning until it snaps, especially when money becomes tight and old insecurities rise like ghosts. She crossed the yard toward me, grinning. "Come on, love. It was just a joke." Just a joke. Funny how those words had become her shield. I nodded stiffly, dropped the sign on the nearest table, and walked toward the back orchard where rows of apple trees cast long shadows across the grass. As I walked, I heard her mutter to Elise, "He takes everything so seriously. It's not my fault he can't laugh at himself." But it wasn't about laughing at myself. It was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. By evening, the sun had dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of tangerine and violet. Family members drifted home. My parents offered me the usual reassurances. "You'll find work soon. Don't worry, this is temporary. Sophie means well." But even their smiles were tight, brittle. Everyone had seen the humiliation. Everyone had watched me pretend it didn't hurt. Sophie and I drove home in silence, passing the fields where cows grazed lazily and wind turbines spun under the pale sky. When we reached our apartment in the quiet outskirts of Leuven, she threw her purse on the table and shrugged. "You're not seriously angry." I sat on the couch. "You embarrassed me." "You embarrassed yourself by acting like a child. It wasn't that deep." "It was." She scoffed. "You're too sensitive. If you could just relax for once." But I didn't hear the rest. My mind crawled back through every small cut she'd delivered over the past months. Every snide remark, every joke at my expense, every moment she reminded me, subtly or directly, that she was the one paying most of the bills, that her corporate job kept us afloat, that I needed to step up. Love doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes, grain by grain, wear after wear, until one day you look down and realize your hands are empty. That night, lying beside her in the dark, The idea of revenge took root. Not loud or immediate, but slow, steady, patient. Revenge doesn't always come from hatred. Sometimes it comes from the quiet realization that you deserve better. A week later, I got a message from Sophie's younger brother, Thomas. He wanted help renovating the small cafe he'd bought, an old brick building near the canal, its interior outdated, its walls stained from decades of cigarette smoke. He knew I'd done carpentry and renovation work back in school. He offered to pay, not much, but enough. I agreed instantly. The cafe smelled of dust and old memories when I first stepped inside. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating moats that floated like tiny ghosts. I felt useful again, capable, needed. Thomas worked beside me, upbeat as always. He was nothing like his sister, humble, thoughtful, earnest. While sanding down the long wooden counter, he sighed. "I wish Sophie were more supportive of you." I blinked. "She talks to you about me?" He hesitated. "Not kindly?" "Of course she didn't. She thinks you don't try hard enough. But I see how much you're helping here. You're talented, Vincent. She likes to be in control." His words stuck with me long after I left the cafe that evening. Control. Yes, that was the word. Sophie didn't want a partner. She wanted a project, someone who owed her more than she owed them, someone who she could shape, someone who would never leave. But I had no intention of staying trapped in her world forever. That was when the idea of real revenge formed. Something bigger than a confrontation, bigger than anger. A plan that would make her face the one thing she feared most. Loss. Not of me. She didn't value me enough for that. But of control. Over the next weeks, as summer deepened and Belgium warmed under long daylight, I worked quietly, renovating the cafe, accepting small jobs from neighbors, selling handcrafted furniture online. Bit by bit, money began to trickle in. Not much, but enough to prove I wasn't helpless. I hid it, I saved it, I planned. Meanwhile, Sophie grew more comfortable, more careless, assuming I was still dependent on her. She mocked my little projects, joked about my volunteer carpentry, told her colleagues that I was finding himself, as though I'd been lost. Then came the night she crossed the line. I'd drawn in silence. She came home drunk from an office party. Her perfume smelled sharp, too sharp, and her lipstick was smudged. She collapsed on the couch and laughed when I asked if she was okay. "Relax, Vincent," she said, waving her hand. "Everyone thought the sign at the barbecue was hilarious. You should have seen the video." My stomach tightened. "Video?" "Oh, yes," she giggled. "Someone filmed it and posted it in the office group chat. You're practically a mascot." Mascot. A grown man. Reduced to a joke for her co-workers. The last bit of love I had for her shriveled in that moment. And what replaced it was something colder, clearer, a resolve she would never see coming. Step one of my revenge was simple. I moved my money, every euro I earned, into a private account under my name alone. Sophie never checked bank statements unless she suspected something was wrong. And I gave her no reason to. Step two was more delicate. I waited for the right moment. It came on a quiet Thursday morning when she was at work. I entered our shared home office, opened her laptop, and accessed her email using the password she arrogantly reused for everything, her childhood dog's name. Inside her inbox, I found exactly what I expected. A contract, a promotion offer, a transfer to the Brussels headquarters, one she hadn't told me about. Why? because the promotion required relocation. And she had no intention of taking me with her. She was planning to leave me slowly, safely, with minimal backlash, to replace me with a man who didn't embarrass her. But she underestimated me. I didn't delete the contract. I didn't sabotage her job. No, that would be too easy, too small. Instead, I printed it and quietly packed my belongings, every tool, every crafted piece of wood, every shirt, every sock, every memory that was mine. I left behind only the things she had bought, the things she could claim as hers, the things she believed defined me. Step 3 unfolded 2 days later. The cafe renovation was complete. Thomas and I stood in the middle of the polished floor, admiring our work. The new lighting gave the brick walls a warm glow. The tables I'd built by hand brought a rustic charm that felt timeless. He turned to me. "I've been thinking. Would you consider being my partner in this? I can't run the place alone. Your work transformed it. We could make this into something real." A partnership, a new beginning, a future Sophie never thought I was capable of having. I shook Thomas's hand, and that handshake sealed the final step of my revenge. I left Sophie a letter on the kitchen counter, not apologizing, not explaining, just truth, plain, sharp, undeniable. I told her I knew about her promotion, that I knew she never intended to take me with her, that I was leaving before she could discard me on her terms. That respect was the price of loving someone, and she had never been willing to pay it. I told her I was starting a business with her brother, and that, for once, she would not be the center of the story. I walked out, locking the door behind me. That evening, she arrived home to an empty apartment, and minutes later, she found my letter. I wasn't there to witness her reaction, but Thomas told me the next day she stormed into the cafe mid-morning, eyes red, fury radiating off her like heat. "How dare you involve my brother?" she shouted. Thomas stood his ground. "Maybe if you treated him and Vincent better, you wouldn't be alone right now." Alone. The one word she feared more than anything. And for the first time, Sophie realized something I had long since learned. Control is an illusion. Respect is a choice. And love, without humility, rots. The cafe opened 3 weeks later. Locals loved it. Students filled it. Tourists wandered in from the canal path and complimented the craftsmanship. I worked long hours, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. Every day my confidence returned piece by piece. Every day I rebuilt myself. Without her. Sophie sent a single message months later. A short one. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Some apologies are sincere, some are desperate. But all of them come too late when respect was never part of the relationship to begin with. On a crisp October morning, as the leaves in Leuven turned shades of amber and ruby, I unlocked the cafe doors and breathed in the familiar warmth of wood, coffee, and fresh pastries. A year ago, I was a joke at a family barbecue. Now, I stood in a place I built with my own hands, strong, steady, free. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all.